Assalamu alaikum, students of class 6th. The task of the day is to practice reading of the unit number 6, The White Mouse Circus. This extract is from Roald Dahl's books, The Witches. The story is about a young boy and his encounter with witches. The boy, who lives with his grandmother, is due to spend his holidays in Norway, but because his grandmother falls ill, they cannot go. Instead, he is taken to a seaside hotel in England. If you have not read the book already, be sure to read it soon. Rooms were booked for us in a place called Hotel Magnificent in the famous seaside town of Bournemouth. Bournemouth, my grandmother told me, was full of old people like herself. They retired there by the thousands because the air was so bracing and healthy it kept them, so they believed, alive for a few extra years. Does it? I asked. Of course not, she said. It's Tommy rot. But just for once, I think we have go to obey the doctor. Soon after that, my grandmother and I took the train to Bournemouth and settled into the Hotel Magnificent. It was an enormous white building on the seafront, and it looked like a pretty boring place to spend a summer holiday in. I had my own separate bedroom, but there was a door connecting my room with my grandmother's room. Just before we left for Bournemouth, my grandmother had given me, as a consolation, a present of 2 white mice in a little cage, and I took them with me. They were terrific fun. I called them William and Mary. And in the hotel, I set out right away teaching them to do tricks. The first trick I taught them was to creep up the sleeves of my jacket and come out by my neck. Then I taught them to climb up the back of my neck on the top of my head. I did this by putting crumbs in my hair. On the very first morning, the chambermaid was making my bed when one of my mice poked its head out from under the sheets. The maid let out a shriek that brought a dozen people running to see who was being murdered. I was reported to the manager. There followed an unpleasant scene in the manager's office with the manager, my grandmother, and me. The manager, whose name was Mr. Stringer, was a bristly man in the black tailcoat. "I cannot permit mice in my hotel, madam," he said to my grandmother. "How dare you say that when your rotten hotel is full of rats anyway?" my grandmother cried. "Rats?" cried Mr. Stringer, going mauve in the face. "There are no rats in this hotel. I saw one this very morning," my grandmother said. "It was running down the corridor into the kitchen." "That's not true," cried Mr. Stringer. "You had better get the rat catcher at once," my grandmother said, "before I report you to the public health authorities. I expect there are rats scuttling all over the kitchen floor and stealing the food off the shelves and jumping in and out of the soup." "Never," cried Mr. Stringer. "No wonder my breakfast toast was all nibbled round the edges this morning," my grandmother went on relentlessly. "No wonder it had a nasty, ratty taste. If you are not careful, the health people will be ordering the entire hotel to be closed before everyone gets typhoid fever." "You are not being serious, madam," Mr. Stringer said. Students, tasu da lesson read kai. Next video ke be inshallah da lesson munga na mani sara tasu is the kawai.